Okay, picking up where we left off, we're talking about running a Java applet on page 495. And the parameters, if you look at the example in the book, they have one for text color and message and back color, and then even some text that shows what happens if you don't. Now, the reason I'm not going to bother to make this thing work is because I can't make it work. Internet Explorer typically is tightened down so much that you can't go out and get a Java applet and have it expect it to work every single time. Again, there's only 2 browsers that do support this, and even they have got it tightened down, so they're really expecting what's called a digitally signed Java class that proves that it came from a reliable source, and I can't demo that because I don't have one that'll work that way. But the example in the book is not bad. Just follow the things like we got here. Throw in some extra parameters, and probably at the very end, you probably want to have like a link that they can go get the Java runtime. That's all a typical kind of a thing. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about Java. It's a good programming language. I've used it. It works really well in a corporate environment. Let's say, for example, I've got, I don't know, some sort of I work in an insurance company. I have this little Java applet on the web page that only the people in the company can get to, an internal web page. And it's got some little thing that calculates their rates. And so they go into the browser, they hit this thing, and out pops this little Java applet on inside their browser windows that calculates their rates. That's perfectly okay. But sending it across the internet, it'd be too much. You'd have phone calls nonstop. I can't get it to work. Okay, so basically, Java applets are dead if you're using across the. If you put it this way, if you're building a brand new web page or with a brand new app, don't use Java for it. Okay, just saying. JavaScript on page 498. Now, JavaScript is different. It's not Java. It's not compiled down. This is a thing that kind of sort of looks, the commands kind of sort of look familiar, but it is not Java. And it is almost always exclusive to the browser. Here's the good part. Every browser has built-in support for JavaScript. Isn't that pretty cool? So I can run little applications that run inside the browser. So my HTML page can embed a tiny piece of code. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay. Now, these things are kind of sort of safe because it's running inside the browser, not like with a plugin. So if the browser has security that says you can't read my credit card numbers, okay, if that's built into, then the JavaScript will also not be able to go look at my documents and find my credit card numbers. So in other words, having it built in is actually good from a security point of view. Let's go through some of it. So there's a document object model. How's that? The DOM. And this is basically what it looks like. It basically says here's the window for the browser, and here's the current document. They also have history. Yeah, I could have a button on my web page that says back that does the same thing as me hitting the back button on my browser. Isn't that pretty cool? Because I have access to the history, location, and some sort of navigation. And so your document, and we talk about, anchor tags and forms and images and links and all the rest of these things. So this is not the entire object model, but this is the top level kind of thing. All right. So let me just give you an example of where I use. So I'm going to go to my web page, of course. Yikes. Okay, I'm going to go to my web page. And down here at the bottom, it says last edited Tuesday, July 12th, 2016. You mean every time I edit this page, I have to go in there and change that date? Man, what if I forget? So, let's go here to view source and see how I did that. Let's scroll down to the bottom where that guy shows up. And it's a JavaScript. It's a script file. Type is JavaScript. And then I use some programming language. And don't worry about what the content of this is. This is not a programming class. But basically, it takes the document. Remember for the document model, right? This would be the web page itself. the document, getting the last modified date, creating a date out of it, and then document write means take the document and spit it out as this thing runs. So now, whenever I make a change to this web page, I don't have to go in and edit this thing because it's automatically part of that. Isn't that pretty cool? So this is a JavaScript. Now, there's some other examples in the book, which they will have one like says today's date. That's an excellent opportunity for the same kind of a thing. If you wanted to have today's date up on the top of your screen every single time somebody went to your web page, that would be another example of using JavaScript. Okay. I kind of like JavaScript. There's some cool things. Let me show you some other JavaScript examples. So here we go. So for example, let's say I want to know how you return a file version. So this appear and disappear thing, okay, that's done with JavaScript. What I basically said was, I don't want to bore them with a bunch of stuff. If they find something that they want, you click on it and then it exposes that little piece, and then you click on it again and it collapses. So all I'm doing is making something appear or disappear, basically with a click of a mouse. How's that done? It's done with JavaScript. Okay, so JavaScript is cool, but I'm not going to show you how it works. It's not really all that relevant. Moving along, page 500, they talk about AJAX. AJAX is kind of sort of an acronym. It stands for Asynchronous, Java, and XML. And AJAX is not really the name of a technology. It's kind of like the bundling of some existing technologies and kind of making a standard set. So the folks at Microsoft originally built this, and they have freely given it away since, and it's being maintained by somebody else. But the AJAX control kit was this little thing that you could install. You would have to install it inside your web page, and then it kind of runs on the server. But it does have some really cool stuff that you could do. One of the features that I love the most in AJAX is the thing called the partial postback. Now let me explain what that means. Let's say I'm filling out a form, and I do a click of a button. Well, the system has to send me everything all over again, the entire form. So, for example, another one of my examples. Let's go back to. Let's go to this guy. Actually, let's go here. Okay. Here is a calculator. If I type the 5 on the calculator, okay, 5 appeared in the calculator window. But in reality, what would have had to happen is it would have had to have reloaded the entire screen. The entire thing. In other words, all the graphics, all the buttons, all the text, everything got reloaded. Every single time you made a click, it reloaded the entire page. Well, AJAX allows you to say, I just want partial of that. In other words, I only want you to reload this little box right here because nothing else changed. So AJAX is cool. If you're not a real programmer, okay, that didn't come out right. If you're just a web developer guy or gal, you probably won't be using AJAX. Because AJAX is designed for things like this, or honest to God, real program, not a web page. I consider this a web application, not a web page. Okay, so that's basically all you need to know. Cool stuff. jQuery. On page 501, a bunch of people got together and said, having JavaScript is fantastic. But why don't we just build a standard set of libraries that you could just give to somebody? And so it'll just provide all this extra functionality so people don't have to write stuff. For example, today's date. Yeah, I could write all the code. But if somebody wrote that for me and debugged it and made sure it worked and it said display date, wouldn't that be better? So all jQuery is a bunch of libraries of JavaScript code that you can embed into your application and saves you from typing. And if you're not a programmer at all, then you could probably run JScript. You could probably go find JScript that'll do practically everything you need to do without ever writing hardly any code at all. Okay, that's kind of what it's for. If you're a nerd and you're a programming kind of guy or gal, then you probably don't need JScript. You can go in there and start doing it yourself. Okay, they got some cool stuff. They got an automatic slideshow. Isn't that cool? In other words, you have a bunch of photographs you want to show somebody. They actually have built all the libraries. So all you have to do is a couple of lines of code, and it'll just advance to the next page, advance to the next page. Now you've seen this all the time on things like websites that show goofy cats and stuff. Well, that's probably how they're doing it with the animation, how to handle mouse clicks. And again, you could write the code, but why? When somebody else has written it for you and given it to you. So jQuery is all about, I don't want to have to write any JavaScript. Can you please do it for me? Cool. On page 502, they talk about some of the new HTML5 features. The first one talks about geolocation. This is most appropriate in phones that have like a GPS involved. But it works on normal kind of things as well. I mean, for example, if I was to go here and say, find, restaurants near me. Helps if I spell restaurants correctly. But the near me, what that basically means is I know where you are. And therefore, I'm going to use that information. So that's kind of sort of what this is about. Web storage. This is kind of getting into geekdom in one heck of a hurry. But basically, the amount of stuff you can store in a cookie is kind of limited. The cookie sizes are kind of small. A lot of people don't like cookies, so they have them turned off because they think it's some sort of a weird security problem. So there's other ways you can persist storage. And so the HTML5 came up with a brand new type of persistent storage. And that's all I'm going to say about that. They also came up with a way of doing offline web applications. So you could have like that calculator. Perhaps that calculator could run in my browser when I'm not connected to the internet. Yeah. You would have to bundle a bunch of stuff and send it all down to me. There's a thing called a manifest file that includes all the parts you're going to need. And if you intend to run this thing while you're not connected to the internet, it's going to list, okay, you need this, pull it all down, and then we're good to go. That's a cool feature. The canvas element. There's a really cool thing they showed in the book. Canvas was kind of sort of designed, well, it's like a canvas. You could have a thing out there, and then you could draw on it, with your mouse. Or what's really cool is, I can put something there and then have it move around, as I'm doing something, or I can have it shift and move. In other words, I finally get to put things exactly where I want them on two-dimensional space, and then have the user interact with them and move things around. It's kind of cool. Read that little section because I kind of like it. I like the way of graphically placing things on the screen exactly where I want them without using like that absolute positioning. If you're using Canvas, I could say, from the corner of the canvas, move it over forward, that kind of stuff. It's kind of cool. Okay, page 505 at the end is talking about accessibility. So the accessibility, again, doesn't necessarily mean just disabilities and stuff. We've been through all universal design. But this is more about being nice and being kind. For example, if you're going to have a plugin, then wouldn't it be nice if you also just gave them the links to go get the plugin in case they don't have it? That's just kind of being nice. Provide text descriptions and captions for audio and video. Yeah. Verify that keyboard access actually works. In other words, if your stuff absolutely requires a mouse to run, then yay, that's a little tough. Check for screen flickering. Check to see if JavaScript is enabled or disabled on their machines. 99% of the time it's going to be enabled. And then if you're using any type of media for navigation, you're going to have some alternate ways of doing it as well. Okay, we've reached the end of this chapter. Thank goodness, huh? And we'll see you guys again in some future chapter.